Hello and welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the first starting 11 show of the year. It's away at Leeds United on Monday at 8 PM, and it's going to be an interesting start to the season. A bit more of an optimistic one. Leeds are one of the weaker sides expected in the Premier League this year, with the transfer business is interesting. It looks like they want to bring a lot of physicality, but I would say we're one of the more physical teams in the Premier League, so it's going to be an interesting matchup in that terms. Going into some information given by David Moyes before the squad, Vitaly Mykolenko is expected to be available for Monday's game. Nathan Patterson and Harrison Armstrong may also be available for selection, and of course Jarrad Branthwaite is out with a hamstring injury. So going through the side that I expect to start this game, in goal we have Jordan Pickford. No shocker there really. One of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League, one of arguably the most consistent goalkeeper in the Premier League, and someone who's never really let us down for the past 4 or 5 years now, so I don't see a world where we wouldn't be starting Jordan Pickford. At right back, I expect it to be Jake O'Brien. Patterson's iffy and Coleman's 97, even though I love him, so I expect Jake O'Brien to start the season at right back, but as I've mentioned in other videos, I do think we should be desperately looking for a new right back. Centre back partnership of Michael Keane and James Tarkowski. I'm not completely confident in Michael Keane. There was an honest part of me that if Harrison Armstrong was available, tempted to slide O'Brien to centre back, play James Garner at right back, and have a midfield two of Harrison Armstrong and Idrissa Gueye. That would honestly be my preferred team. But I'm going off what I expect David Moyes to play, not what I would want us to play. David Moyes, the manager, knows much more about football than I do, so this is what I expect. Vitaly Mykolenko will play at left back, but I only expect him to get around 60-65 minutes before we get a good 30-minute Adamazno cameo. Double pivot of James Garner and Idrissa Gueye, to nobody's surprise. Idrissa Gueye was arguably our best player last season, and although we've had a difficult pre-season, from what I've seen, James Garner looks quite sharp, looks like he could have an impact, and yeah, I think the early parts of this squad, it's really hard to go in detail and about what you expect, because I think it's one of those where it's so written in stone already that it's something we've seen all of last season. There's not really that much change, so it's one of those where we've probably done this starting 11 show 30 out of 38 times last season. It was that, of course, with Jarrad Branthwaite where Michael Keane is instead, and of course in the early half of the season where Sean Dyche wouldn't touch O'Brien with a barge pole. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the solid 7 guaranteed. I'd be very shocked if Moyes gives Asno a start. I would like to see that, and I would be massively shocked if he's willing to give Harrison Armstrong a chance, even though I think he looked really bright when given a chance in pre-season as well. And I think James Garner's crossing of the ball will be much more useful than O'Brien's, and I just think O'Brien's a much more dependable centre-half than Michael Keane is. Then you get on to the front four. On the right, I've gone Illiman and Dye. In the middle, Keane and Dewsbury Hall. On the left, new signing Jack Grealish. Of course, Dewsbury Hall also a new signing. And up front, I've gone with Beto. Yeah, again, I think a lot of people who predict the lineups will have something similar to this. Illiman and Dye being pushed out to the right is a bit unfortunate, but I think he's one of those players where, ironic, we heard so much when we signed him from Marseille about how he can't play off the left, how he can't do this. He's proven he can play off the left very well. He's a dynamic dribbler, good with the ball at his feet, a decent passer of the ball as well, so I don't think playing him on the right side with his right foot is going to be any sort of problem. Dewsbury Hall will fill that Doucouré-ish role of someone who, although isn't the most offensive player, he will track back to defend and make it a midfield free when necessary. He's much more technically gifted than Doucouré, much better at driving with the ball and playing it out, as we saw in his Championship Player of the Season campaign with Leicester, for Chelsea in the Club World Cup, the Conference League, not much in the Premier League, but I think Dewsbury Hall's going to add much more creativity in the middle of the park, in a way where if James Garner wants to play one of those threaded balls that he couldn't really play to Doucouré, someone like Dewsbury Hall there is going to offer much more presence. He's a bit of a box-crashing attacking midfielder as well, which we know David Moyes loves from his previous stint at Everton. So I think he'll really be able to offer a lot in this team, and I think he may be the standout performer this season. I think that's crazy to say considering who we do have on the left, but I think Dewsbury Hall's a fantastic player who I do think by the end of the season is going to be within and outside out of an England call-up because of his versatility in midfield, his ability to play as a deeper midfielder, which I think he can do. I think some people are writing him off because he hasn't done it much, but I think the skill set is clearly there. And I think if you play him next to a sitting midfielder, he'd be absolutely wonderful in that role. And then, of course, as a box-to-box midfielder, and then as a number 10, he can do it all. I genuinely think he's going to have an amazing season. I could see double-digit goals and close to double-digit assists, if I'm being honest. And then on the left, Jack Grealish, our new signing from Manchester City, well, our new loan from Manchester City. I think this is going to be a really standout game for him, although I do think both the left and the right wingers are going to be given more of a free role. I think you will see... I think you also may see something a bit like a 4-3-2-1, where Dewsbury Hall may drop back a little bit, allowing Grealish and Ndiaye to take up more central space, work in those half spaces, which I think both men are absolutely excellent in. Jack Grealish, I think, is going to be given a really free role, so I think you'll see him all over the central and wide left areas, where under Pep he was more of a baseline hugging winger who just stuck to the left side. I think you'll see a lot more of him drifting in centrally to pick up the ball. You'll see him dropping back to pick up the ball from midfield and driving with it. I think you'll see that from all three of our number 10s, which I think is what makes it really interesting. Three players who can drop deeper, pick up the ball and drive with it. And also I think all three of them are really good at creating space for themselves off of the ball as well. So I think it's one where I think we're going to have a really dynamic three behind the striker compared to what we had in previous years, and I think that's really going to open up Beto up front, because I think it's one of those where Beto didn't really get much service, and if he did, the service wasn't great a lot of the times. He does miss his chances, and I brutally honest do expect Tiano Barry to take his spot by the end of the season, but I still think Beto's a good striker. I think he can score goals for this team, and I think with that level of creativity behind him, he should get his best campaign in the Premier League. If not, Barry should be playing. I'm going to be brutally honest. I think it's one where Beto could easily get 15-16 goals in the league if he's firing on all fronts, and if the three behind him are playing as I expect them to, which is really creative, lots of chances being created. I think us going from a team that couldn't really create chances to, I expect us outside of your top six, your expected top six, will be one of the highest chance creation teams in the league. I do really expect that. Even more if we get a right back who's good at bombing up and down the touch lines. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's one of those where there is a lot of positives to this team, but again there are the negatives. Of course, not having our solid centre back partnership that was one of the best centre back partnerships in the league last season. I think Leeds have a lot of physicality and are going to try stick a man on players like Garner, like Mikalenko. Of course, they've got big players like Anton Stack, even Michael Keane, who's good in the air. I think they're going to try pressure Michael Keane, knowing he's eligible to make a mistake, although I do think Michael Keane will have a fine game, because I do think we're going to win the game. I think it's one where, even just against someone who's a bit smaller, they're going to stick these big physical midfielders on and launch the ball forward. But I think we have players like Tarkowski, like O'Brien. Keane in his own way can deal with that pressure if he's able to keep himself, locked into his performance, if he doesn't, lose focus, which he has a tendency to do. I do think this could be a real statement maker of an opening game. Of course, the Leeds are going to be fired up. They've seen Sunderland get the win. Of course, Burnley got smashed. But Sunderland got a dominant 3-0 win over West Ham. They never looked like losing the game, in my opinion, besides early stretches of good stuff from Jared Bowen. I don't think they ever really looked like losing it. I think Leeds and the Elland Road atmosphere is going to be really good for them being back in the Prem, but I don't think that can boost this Leeds team. That I'm not sure where the goals are going to come from. I don't know. I don't expect Jack Harrison to start. I'm not sure if Calvert-Lewin will start. But I think if Calvert-Lewin does start, that's better for us, because we know how he plays. We know how to game plan around that. And I think you're going to see Lucas Demetra up front. But I think Leeds are going to be focusing on crossing the ball in and overloading the box with those big players like Anton Stack, like Ethan Ampadu. I think they're going to be very reliant on set pieces, and I think we need to be prepared for that. I think it's one where we should win the game, I do think, even at Elland Road. I think we've got much more creativity than Leeds. I don't think Leeds' defence is amazing. I haven't seen much of the goalkeeper, although I expect it to be an improvement over Ilan Melia. And I just don't know how Leeds are going to go about creating chances besides set pieces with the players they have. I think Stack's a really good box-to-box midfielder. I think he's going to surprise a lot of our fans with how technically gifted he is, but At the same time, I am reasonably confident going into this game. Just to go through things again, I'm going to go over the starting 11 again one more time. Jordan Pickford, goalkeeper. A back four, Jake O'Brien, Michael Keane, James Tarkowski and Mikolenko. James Garner and Idris Gueye as the two holding midfielders. The three behind the striker, Iliman Ndiaye on the right, Kane Dewsbury Hall in the middle, and Jack Grealish on the left. Although I could also see Jack Grealish through the middle and Dwight McNeil off the left, but I just don't see why we wouldn't start Dewsbury Hall. I mean, I guess there's a chance in a world where he goes Garner right back, Dewsbury Hall next to Idris Gueye, Grealish in the 10, McNeil on the left, but I don't expect that. I think he's gonna get as much aerial presence in the team as possible for this to play against this physical Leeds side. So I do expect the starting 11 I mentioned to be it. I expect McNeil to come off the bench for this game. I expect Dewsbury Hall to play in the middle, and Jack Grealish, although it doesn't seem like a number 10 role because he's on the left, I think it'll be a much more central number 10 role. I see it with Ndiaye as well. I see this being a very narrow three behind the striker, with the width coming from Mikolenko and O'Brien, and I don't actually think O'Brien's the worst crosser of the ball. There is a good chance it shifts to a back three as well, with maybe Ndiaye moving up to more of a striker role, James Garner playing sort of wide right, and then you have, I don't know. I think it's one where it's really hard to predict what Moyes is going to do here, because he has experimented with a back three. I don't expect us to start in that back three, but I could easily see O'Brien tucking in, Garner taking a more wide right role, and then Ndiaye almost playing as a second striker in that way, and then Dewsbury Hall and Grealish playing as the more playmakery roles in a more narrow sense, with Dewsbury Hall a little deeper. But we'll have to see how it goes. I think Everton are going to win this game 2-0 with goals from Beto and Jack Grealish. Hopefully, but that is all for this video. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Everton Newsfeed, and follow myself on Twitter at CallumBrannan3. And I'll see you all for the next video and all live stream that I am on.